Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Lo Xinzeng from class 1026. Today, my group mates and I will be presenting on the topic Impacts on Singapore of a Weakening US Dollar. I will give a brief intro of the topic. Taylor will then tell you a bit more of the background. Susui will elaborate on the impacts, and Jeffrey will wrap this presentation up. So firstly, why did we choose this topic? We feel that this topic is very relevant to what is happening around us, as it affects each and every Singaporean. Also, by studying this topic, we can relate our knowledge to understand it better. The scope. We will be touching on the main industries that are affected in Singapore, the extent on the impact of the Singapore economy, and what the Singapore government can do to help the situation. In addition, we will relate our knowledge to this topic, as it helps to us to further understand the causes and effect it has on the real world. This way, we can broaden our view on the global economy, and we can learn how to relate to real world issues. To fill you in, firstly, the United States of America is the world's major economy superpower, and the US used the quantitative easing policy to counter the depression in 2008. In addition, Singapore is one of the US major trading power. Now, let Taylor tell you a bit more on this topic.
Hi, this is Taylor here, and I'll be talking to you about some background info for our project. And firstly, we have to know why is the US devaluing their dollar, the US dollar, to such a point? Well, this all comes from the fact that the United States actually employs an expansionary monetary policy through which it lowers its interest rate and increases money supplies over the years. All this done to promote investments and hence causing AD to increase. And as you can see from the graph, for it to increase from 80 to 81, all this is done to stimulate the economy and increase real national income. However, something about their policy is that they have actually reached a point where they actually have to employ quantitative easing. And this was done during the global recession of 2007 to 2010, so as to stimulate the fledgling economy. Now, you may be asking, what is quantitative easing? It is an unconventional monetary policy whereby the central bank creates money which it uses to buy government bonds and other financial assets. It creates money supply in order to increase the AD and stimulate the economy. It is considered by many to be a last-ditch effort to stimulate the economy when conventional monetary policy fails, and in this case, the global recession. There are of course benefits and cons of using quantitative easing. Some believe that this can actually help stimulate the economy. However, some, as you can see from the comic here, says that, well, if you feed the banks enough dollars, something is bound to come out of the other end eventually. But I don't think it'll be good. So, what actually happened after the US employed quantitative easing? At the exchange rate between the US and the Singapore dollar actually fell to a record low of 1 USD to Singapore $1.29 during one of the years. If I'm not wrong, it should be 2009. All this was done to prevent deflation during the subprime mortgage crisis, which has actually affected the global economy quite badly, and so drastic measures had to be done. Well, however, as of November 2010, even though the economy has picked up, The US has planned to employ further quantitative easing by pumping $600 billion more into its economy.
We've seen how the US have been implementing quantitative easing and the lowering of the US exchange rate to stimulate its economy. And now we'll take a look at how these affect the Singapore economy. Firstly, imports will become relatively cheaper compared to that of the previous period of time, since the value of the Sing dollar has strengthened against that of the US dollar, and each Sing dollar is able to purchase a greater amount of US goods. Conversely, exports will become more expensive now that the US dollar has decreased in value compared to that of the Sing dollar, and as such, the US consumers or firms will have to pony up a greater amount of money so as to make up for the fall in the value of the US dollar. These two, when combined, will lead to that of a BOP surplus diminishing, or if there's a BOP deficit, it will worsen. This is only one effect of the weakening US dollar on the Singapore economy, and this is a bad effect. But however, there are positive effects. If we were to look from from the perspective of a firm, we know that total profits is equals to total revenue minus total costs, and we know that there will definitely be a decrease in total revenue due to decrease in demand of our goods. However, the total costs would decrease only and only if the Singapore dollar actually appreciates relative to other countries' currencies, such as the Chinese yuan, and this would depend on the degree to which the US dollar would weaken against that of the yuan, so that the Singapore dollar can appreciate against that of the yuan, and because of that, firms over here will find it cheaper to import producer goods from China to produce, and hence it will further decrease production costs. And because production costs have decreased more than the fall in total revenue, there will be an increase in profits earned by the firm. This is only one of a lot of factors affecting how total profits will increase or decrease, and it remains to be seen whether it is as such. The increase in profits by a firm will lead to the GDP of a country increasing, and because the government is able to collect more taxes due to the greater income of the company through income tax, is able to use these money collected from the companies to fund for greater economic growth, and has developed the country further, leading to better standards of living and attracting more investors to set up over here. Another impact is that called hot money inflow. More US investors will be enticed by greater profit margins here due to the strong Singapore dollar, and supported by the low US interest rates, which encourage borrowing amongst US investors, and hence lead to an increase in foreign portfolio investments over here. And these investors would normally invest in property and stock markets, considering their volatile nature, and as such, there will be a capital inflow to Singapore. Whether there will be an inflationary bubble or not will depend on our country's ability to manage these capital inflows and then channel these inflows resourcefully to other areas. To other areas.
Now for the conclusion. For our conclusion, our group will be giving you a summary of what we mentioned earlier. So basically, to begin, we'll be telling you about the United States of America again. So, the USA is the world's largest economy, and its dollar, the US dollar, is the international currency of the world. Hence, the weakening of the US dollar will affect the world, and especially to economies that trade a lot. Next, Singapore. Singapore is a very small and open economy, and Singapore relies a lot on our exchange rate policy, and hence Singapore will definitely be affected by the weakening US dollar. Also, Singapore lacks resources, and hence Singapore is heavily dependent on her trade to grow. To make things worse, the United States of America is Singapore's main trading partner, and Singapore exports up to 11.2% to the United States of America, making the United States of America the largest buyer of Singapore's goods. Also, Singapore imports up to 14.7% from the United States of America. Next, the impact on the Singapore economy due to the weakening of the US dollar. So, firstly, there might be a balance of payment trade deficit if the price of Singapore exports is not increased. And this deficit will be very big since trading forms a huge part of Singapore's income. However, the increase in price of the Singapore exports will cost us our price competitiveness for the Singapore goods. However, we are glad to know that Singapore exports to the USA consist mainly of machineries and equipment, including electronics, pharmaceuticals, and petrochemicals. And these goods are highly inelastic in demand. Hence, Singapore can actually increase the price of our exports, as this will result in a more than proportionate increase in revenue, ceteris paribus. And this action might end up causing Singapore to earn more instead and leading to a trade surplus instead. And in a way, this weakening of the US dollar is good for Singapore, as Singapore will be able to take advantage of the weakening US dollar. However, the weakening US dollar also means an increase in demand for US goods by Singaporeans. And this increase in demand for the US dollar will cause more Sing dollar to be supplied so as to purchase this US dollar. And this action will lead to a weakening of the Sing dollar. And hence, in order to prevent huge fluctuation of the Sing dollar, the Singapore government might use the exchange rate policy to buy back our Sing dollar so as to prevent, like what I said earlier, the fluctuation of the Sing dollar. Hence, this will decrease our foreign reserve, which is bad for Singapore. Also, taxes are issued based on firms' profit, and for local domestic firms that have ventured overseas to the United States of America, such as Creative Technology, any losses or profits by them will definitely have an impact on the Singapore's economy. And if these overall profits of these local domestic firms are negative, that is an overall loss, it will lead to a decrease in tax to the Singapore government, and this could result in a balance of payment trade deficit and thus affecting Singapore economy in a very bad way. And this is the end of our presentation. Thank you.